Hi everyone, I'm going to try and keep this video relatively brief, but in it we're going to be discussing the form and the structure of London. Okay, so we're going to start with thinking about just the overall structure of the poem. So it's quite simple. It is a poem with 4 quatrains, and you can see on there that I've marked each of the quatrains with a number 1, 2, 3 or 4. Now quatrain is a stanza with 4 lines. You can see each of these stanzas has 4 lines in it. So let's think about the focus of each of the stanzas so we can see more of the overall structure of the poem. Now stanza 1 focuses on the people in London who are suffering. So Blake's or the speaker is walking through the city and marks in every face I meet, marks of weakness, marks of woe. So that's a focus on the people who are suffering. Similarly in stanza 2, the speaker talks about the sounds they can hear, and the sounds reflect the suffering of the people. Every cry of every man, every infant's cry of fear, every voice and every ban. Then in stanza 3, you've got a little bit of a shift of focus. So instead of thinking about the people who are suffering in London, the speaker starts to talk about the reasons behind the suffering and those people that are responsible. So you get him or her, whoever the imagined speaker is, criticising the church and the palace and the people in power and what they've done or not done to support the people of London. And then in stanza 4 again, you've got the focus shifting back to the people who are suffering. So Blake talks about the youthful harlot and the newborn infant's tears and things like that. So we could argue that in this poem there is a circular structure, because we start by focusing on the people who are suffering in stanza 1 and then end with the focus on the people who are suffering in stanza 4. So that could reflect the cyclical and inescapable nature of poverty and suffering. So it's something that the people of London cannot get away from, and therefore the cyclical structure of the poem reflects that. Cyclical or circular, either of those two is a valid way to describe the structure of this poem. Now we'll think a little bit about the rhyme scheme. Now I've marked it on there. It's A, B, A, B. It's very simple and it's very regular. Blake has used full and perfect rhymes. So all the rhymes, they're not half rhymes, they're perfect rhymes. And it kind of shows, it kind of reflects the rhythm of a walk through London. It could be like one foot in front of the other, one rhyme after the other. So you could argue that it reflects the rhythm of a walk, but it could also symbolise the fact that suffering is repetitive and is boring and people can't get away from it. Just like we said about the circular structure just earlier on, reflects the inescapable nature of suffering. So we've talked about the quatrains and their focus, we've talked about the rhyme scheme, and finally we're going to think about stanza 3, because stanza 3 is a little bit different from the rest. As I said, it focuses on the causes of the people suffering rather than the suffering itself. So it's kind of interrogating why that is happening, talking about the church, talking about the government, the palace, that sort of thing. So if we zoom in a little bit on stanza 3, you can see here I've highlighted the first letter of each line of stanza 3, and that's for a reason, because stanza 3 is an acrostic. So the first letters of each line here spell out the last word in stanza 2. So I'll just pull it back so you can see that. So there you go, I've highlighted the acrostic, and I'll just highlight the final word in stanza 2 so you can see it. So now this is a clever bit this is a bit of clever poetry by Blake, but also it kind of acts like a plea to the reader to listen to the protest. Hear me, hear what I'm saying. So it's a bit hidden as well. That's important. That it's hidden. You don't 100% notice that the first time you read the poem. It's something you have to dig out and look for. And the significance of that is that you could argue that the suffering of the people of London is hidden. People is hidden because in London in the 1790s, a lot of people would have just seen the progress and the development going on there. Like, they would have seen the factories and the new technologies that were coming out as a result of the Industrial Revolution and thought that that was a really good thing. But what Blake's saying is that behind that progress is extreme suffering and extreme poverty, and it's often hidden, and he wants the speaker to hear his message. So little ear, hear the message. So there we go. I could go into Blake's use of meter in this poem, but I won't do that today because I think I'd rather you guys are in school so that I could explain that in a bit more detail. So what I want you to do now is go away and access the worksheet and complete the consolidation questions for form and structure. Okay, have a fantastic day. Bye.